All right, welcome to the Quantum Photons. My name is Aaron. I have with us my co-host Stefan and a new co-host added in the mix, Melanie, who will introduce herself in a moment. We've been away for a bit. We haven't been producing podcasts recently. Various reasons for that. You've got school between myself and Stefan, and obviously Melanie is new because she's being, again, she'll introduce herself and she'll tell you all about herself. But we've been out and doing a lot of things, and we're hoping to continue to return this science podcast back to regular production. This month will be a little bit wonky with some stuff, but we're hoping to make this a regular thing at least once a month or twice a month or more, depending. And hopefully you'll get some information out of it, you'll get some joy out of it, and maybe you'll even learn something. Fingers are crossed on all of those things. So my name is Aaron. A brief introduction. I teach language arts at an alternative high school here in rural Colorado. We have about 40 to 45 students, and I have been teaching for the better part of now going into my 7th year. And I taught for 2 years at a middle school, and I'm now into my 5th year at my alternative high school. I teach grades 9 through 12. I teach all the subjects. I do all the curriculum. It's just an all-encompassing wraparound service that we provide to our students. I don't stand in front of the classroom and teach. I literally am side by side working with them on their process as they go through a self-paced system that we've designed. And we've continued to work on it and revise it and upgrade it and clean it up. And we're learning, again, we learn every year that we do this with different students and different populations and different teachers. So it's always a learning process where I teach. And so part of this science podcast is I am the one science layman. When it comes to this, I am not a scientist. I'm a language arts teacher, but I have an interest in science fiction. And so together with that, I'm here to kind of be the everyday questioner, kind of curiosity. And sometimes I do have some knowledge of science, but primarily it is up to Stefan and our new co-host, Melanie, as well. So that's my story. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing here. Stefan, we will move over to you for your introduction as to who you are, what you do, and where you're going.
Well, so obviously my name's Stefan, as he said. My job's not that glamorous. I'm a warehouse supervisor for a company that provides commissary for the state of West Virginia. We service about 75% of the entire state. So my job deals with the logistics, the operations, the loading and unloading of trucks. If my boss isn't there, I pretty much essentially run the warehouse. We are actually located on the prison grounds, so we have inmates who do the work. So I have to manage them as well. And that can be a chore sometimes, but, that's neither here nor there. I am a senior in college. I will be graduating the 29th of, I will be finishing the 29th of December. My conferral, I believe, is in February, and graduation and commencement's in May. So all coming up very quickly. My degree is in aerospace science, so a lot of space-related things. And so I am really excited to be going into my field of study, hoping to work for NASA, SpaceX, somewhere in there. It's a challenging field to get into, but once you get in, it's way easier to do so. So I'm just, finishing my degree and going from there. Our next person, the co-host, actually comes from being my professor at American Public University. I am thrilled that she joined us, and I will let her introduce herself right now.
Hello, I'm Melanie. I'm professor of astronomy and space studies at American Public University. I've been there for about a year. Before that, I was the astronomer and education director at the Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute for about 4 years. And just graduated with my master's degree in astronomy and physics before then. It's all very exciting, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
We are very definitely happy to have you. So normally we would move on, but I have questions because I know enough about Stefan, but I don't know anything about you. And I think the audience who eventually will see this was already going to have questions because I'm the natural guy that I just keep asking until someone tells me to stop asking questions, to the point where it can be kind of obnoxious, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I have to ask questions. So what in your lifetime, what got you started with science? Because like for me with language arts, like I love to read. I love literature. I love the stories. I love the details within language arts and all the pieces and parts of it. That's been a joy since I was a kid. And that's the question for you is, what is your science story, and how did you get from where you were to now where you are in a situation where you've just gotten your master's, and you are continuing that climb into more knowledge and more science and more of that?
Yeah, I probably really kind of got into it from my parents. I was always a very curious child and had a lot of questions and always wanted to understand just things around me. I was homeschooled through high school, and my parents, I feel like they did a really good job of encouraging me and my siblings to pursue the things that really interested us, no matter what it was. So they kind of fostered that curiosity in all different directions. And eventually, at some point, I think it was some sort of Nova special that kind of hooked me to want to go to the library and pick up all the books and things like that. My mom stayed home and homeschooled me and my three sisters, and my dad worked like 2 and 3 jobs to keep the family running. One of them was an overnight paper route. And so
Okay.
on occasion we got to go with Dad for a couple hours in the night when, we didn't have a lot going on for school the next day kind of thing, or it'd be a weekend or something. And where I lived in Florida at the time was fairly quiet and unoccupied, and so people turned their street lights off and their outside lights off, and you could just look out the window as Dad's driving like 5 miles an hour down the road, throwing newspapers, and we could just look at all the stars. And my dad's a scientist. He's a hydrogeologist, and he's always loved space science.
Okay, so teach him out. I know what a geologist is. I know what a hydro is. I don't know what a hydrogeologist is. I'm gonna need some context, please.
Yeah, he's so his main focus is water, geology and water. So he does a lot of work. He's done work as a water plant operator. He's done lots of consulting, well drilling, fixing water problems to get people clean water, potable water, dealing with storm water, things like that. All kinds of work and research and activities in those areas.
So that's interesting to me. So like here in Colorado, just for some context, I don't know if your dad has any experience in water law.
Yes.
It is insane. It is badonkadonks beyond any, like, Colorado water law is like, there are people at like university level who are like paid as like, okay, hey, can you come in and advise on how the water law works within this like 3-mile parcel of land where we've got these different competing requests for we're going to put an apartment complex here, we're going to have a housing development there, and it's like, well, you can't really do anything with that until you know, yet do you have the water, who has the water rights, how much you have to pay for the water. It is to hear them talk about it, my brain starts to short circuit at a certain point early on in the conversation. And so it's not just, so it doesn't sound like it's not just us in Colorado that are dealing with this, is that it's all over, where you have to have someone who knows what they're doing to say, no, this is how that works.
Yes. My dad did a lot of that
Oh my
for
gosh.
the state of Florida, and kind of knew the lay of the land for a lot of other states as well, and what the ecology of the U.S. is, and where you're going to have different types of water and
That's legit.
Yeah, so he's always been very science focused, a very scientific minded person,
Okay.
very analytical. So we got to kind of explore different science topics with him at 2:30 in the morning as he's
That's
throwing
awesome.
newspapers. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of what we talk about both here on Quantum Photons, but also on other podcasts, is a lot of times interest in science. It comes from families. It comes from it's shared within families, within family history. It's not just like, oh, suddenly I just decided to start just like looking into science or space or whatever. Usually that's fostered in a family setting, and that I think is a brilliant and beautiful part still of a lot of science minds and scientists, is that was not, it was fostered. And it's really heartening to hear that that's obviously still a thing, because science is one of the greatest and most amazing things that, again, language arts teacher couldn't tell you the formula for any of it, but it's fascinating because it's so incredible, so detailed, and it's so in depth. I could go on about science and the miracles of science, but we have a podcast to do. So the first thing that I kind of want to just gently talk on, again, because again, I am not the scientist. So hold on a second, stand by.
While you're figuring out what you want to do there, Aaron, you said that about being fostered into science. Not really for me. I mean, I'm the one who really enjoys that stuff. So, I was like, I've always wanted to do this. Never thought it would be possible. Let's go do it. Of course, my family supports me 100%. They ask me questions all the time. Or they're like, oh, well, how does this work? What is this? And I'm like, well, this is this. But I have people come up to me and they ask questions, and I can talk about like what I love in science for hours. Rockets and space and all that, that's just something I love. And so it's very interesting because there really wasn't anyone in my family that did that. It's just something I've always loved. I mean, my parents they think it's interesting, but my parents aren't scientists, neither of them. They don't come from science backgrounds at all. My dad works in a hardwood floor manufacturing plant, and my mom is a secretary and a dental assistant. So, and neither of them went to college. I'm a first-generation college student, so I'm like breaking the whole mold around here. But going through it and, trying to show people that people in West Virginia aren't as dumb as people think they are. Because apparently there's this persona that we're really dumb, and I don't understand it. Like, you watch movies, and it's always like, oh, it happened in West Virginia, and it's like, why are we the ones that get picked on? I don't know.
That's true. That's a good point. Goodness. Well, you're a wonderful student. You're absolutely one of the best students that I've had at APU. Definitely in that like top 3 kind of category.
That's a good thing.
I don't know if I can say that. I'm not allowed to favorites, perhaps. Favorites. Everybody does great. Everybody works hard. What I mean is, it's very obvious to tell. Yeah, it's very obvious. You can tell, at least on my end, in doing grading and looking at how people are writing and interacting. You can tell when people are really putting in 100% of their effort and doing the best that they can and trying to wanting to learn as much as they can is what I mean by best.
Right. No, I get that.
Like that obvious desire to learn and work hard is really there. That's awesome.
It was really interesting though, because like when I started, that class was not there. They put that class into effect after I started. So like I'm trying to figure out, because they're like, this class is no longer provided. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to take? I mean, I have to take something in place of it. So it took me like 3 weeks to finally figure out from student aid, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what you need. I'm like, well, thanks finally for telling me what I needed. And they're like, this is an elective for you. I'm like, no, technically it's not. It's a major that I need to take. So I don't know what you got to do here, but something needs to be figured out. So, but they finally figured it out.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
You're good.
I was doing something on my end, so I missed most of that. But I think Stefan was talking about kind of his background and whatever else. So anyway, so what I was looking at article wise was the ULA Vulcan. So there's different, and again, I'm not the scientist, but I have an understanding of the surface level of this. Is that there are at least 2 to 3 competing rockets that are working to get to space, and the ULA is one of them, and SpaceX is another one, and I think there's a third one. Stefan, you might have some knowledge on if it's. I think is it Boeing or somebody or some such nonsense.
Well, there's Origin, there's Rocket Lab, there's all kinds. So technically,
everyone's trying to get to space, but only some of them are really making that progress. And so the article that I'm talking about is from a website called Hot Air. It's traditionally a more conservative political website, but they do talk about space stuff sometimes. And the interesting thing was ULA Vulcan made it to space, but something went terribly wrong. And so it did go on its first mission, and then something happened where it didn't make its correct turn, or something went wrong. And it's interesting how what I view, and again, this is the layman's view, is that like ULA has been trying very hard, and there's been I've watched a lot of videos about their work, and they're trying to really do kind of like this open source kind of deal where they're trying to get to space and trying to do it right. The unfortunate bit for them is that SpaceX is doing it just a little bit better. So ULA, the facts and the figures on ULA has spent around $7 billion on Vulcan since 2014, but it can only carry anywhere from 20 tons to orbit, and it's single use, versus SpaceX has spent less than $4 billion on Starship since 2019, and is designed to lift 100 tons and is reusable. And so it's interesting to kind of see what's kind of how it's all shaking out, because we've got issues obviously tangentially with I can't say the word tangentially. There we go. I got it in two. Is that there is issues with what Boeing, and it's, from what I understand, it's actually not Boeing's specific issue. It's Northrop Grumman and a couple of other companies that they contract out and work with. The issues where our astronauts were stuck in space, and the thing that they were going to use to get back home was malfunctioning and not working, and they were concerned that it wasn't going to survive the return because of issues. And it feels like we're in this kind of wild, I don't want to call it the Wild West, but there's just a lot happening. And it sounds weird to say this, but I would rather there be a lot happening than what happened after all the shuttle disasters that 10, 15 years ago, where nothing was going on. Everything was shut down, and there was just this like kind of fear of going back into space because we had lost so much. Both people and spaceships in the process. And so when I saw the ULA Vulcan making it to space, but something went wrong, it was just like, oh man, like you want so much for us to be successful. And you want this vision of Star Trek or, whatever, Babylon 5. You want the vision of that future to be so much closer than it is. And we're as smart as we are, and as good as we are, and as high tech as we are in 2024, we're still learning every step of the way. And so the leak from the SRB was what was causing the issue with the Centaur, and that's also what caused the Challenger accident. So it's very interesting that ULA is really trying, but it's also just kind of like we've seen a lot of disappointment, and I think for me, I have to remind myself disappointment is a part of the job, is a part of this, because this is the first real. We haven't done a lot with privatization until recently in the last 10, 15 years, and we're seeing finally the test results and all that stuff happening, and that's the exciting part is that we, very real possibility, will have spaceflight privatized by these companies who are going to do better and help us get NASA, get it back off the ground and get us into a point. So I love the ULA Vulcan. I love SpaceX. I love it all. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm just excited that we are dealing with the very real possibility that, in 10 years to maybe 20 years, worst case scenario, we can have a situation where we can have multiple rocket launch companies operating in tandem with NASA to get us where we need to go. And that's exciting. That brings me joy, and it gives us an opportunity to see what the future holds. And that's my commentary on the ULA Vulcan story, just because it's my geek mind of my science fiction mind that just goes, oh my gosh, we're actually going to be able to pull this off. We're going to have a lot of disaster, like a lot of failures, but we're really going to get this done. So I don't know if you guys have any feelings or thoughts on the Centaur second. It was a second certification launch, and so there's the question of, with the failure, they're going to have to either put the certification on hold or try to do something else. So I didn't know if either of you had any thoughts on the Vulcan Centaur or the second certification launch before we move forward to the next topic. I wanted to give you room to opine or give your thoughts as I have rambled on for the better part of 10 minutes.
That's real dangerous to ask me my opinion on these things, because this is what I'm literally studying. But to piggyback on you, so ULA has been around for a long time. They're a very successful company.
Yep.
They've had a lot of successful rockets. But what people seem to think is that a rocket should just go up in space with no issues. There's not supposed to be issues. They've tested it. It's fine. That's not how this works. Rockets when you build a new rocket, there's going to be issues, and there's going to be multiple issues.
Yeah.
And the only way for the company
Yeah.
to fix that is to launch the rocket, get the data, and fix it. I mean, what is it? Starship had 4 test launches before they even successfully brought it back down to Earth. So, like, it's not an easy process. It's not a cheap process. The biggest problem for ULA has been budget cuts. I actually applied for a job with them, and they didn't hire for that job. They cut like 20 or 30 jobs on their page and didn't hire anyone for it because they didn't have the funds. ULA, even though it's a private company, most of it's funded through government contracts. The majority of everything that they've done has been government contracts. They're not even slated to be one of the people to help send people back to the moon. That's just not what their primary job is, at least not currently. But this was definitely a problem to see a second certification test, and you see this issue. But this is why you see so many certification tests and testing phases, because of what happened with the space shuttle. This was a big thing that they put in place because they don't want that to happen again. There's so many uncrewed flights because they're making sure it's safe, and they are very, very careful about it nowadays. Like it's crazy. You was talking about the cost to launch one Vulcan rocket. So to launch a fully stacked Starship is $90 million. So there's a big difference in play there. And SpaceX is just they're doing it well. They're doing it productively. They've got a lot of people working many hours. I have a friend that works there, and he starts work at 5 or 6 in the morning. Sometimes he's not done till the next morning. Whatever they're doing, he's like, "Oh yeah, I came home, but I got to go back out in a few hours." I'm like, "Okay." So he works in launch operations, so he deals with the testing before these flights occur. So he's a very, very busy person. But like I said, ULA they're a very successful company. The Vulcan is just it's having its issues, and I'm sure they will definitely pine it out and take care of it in the end. But the biggest thing is just people always think rockets should fly perfect the first time, and that's not how this works.
Well, we're used to it because of we're old enough to remember the space shuttles, they just went perfectly and everything was fine. It was but that was a time tested, and even those shuttles had issues with the disasters. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, man, we got spoiled, and again, the too long didn't read conversation that we won't go into. NASA got careless, and that was one of the accusations with the later disaster. I think it was Discovery, when that was a situation where they knew that there was legitimate concerns about what was going on, and there was a lot of accusations and a lot of reports that suggested that y'all got comfortable and whatever. So. I don't know. I guess, Melanie, if you have any thoughts before we move on to the next topic, or any closing thoughts on any of those things that we've literally just spewed on about for the last few minutes.
Yes, Columbia is the one you were thinking of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in 2003, and I remember reading the Columbia accident incident report, the whole thing. Oh my goodness, it was very long reading, but very insightful as well to kind of some of that. I don't want to say laziness, but that
almost like apathy. Would you think?
In some of the bureaucracy, you could see it from the report, from the different interviews, from the different manuals, from the different kind of perspectives and questions about what happened, what failed, what went wrong. You could see the difference from that sort of report from the Apollo 13 report. You could see a very stark difference. One was a much steeper mechanical learning curve for Apollo 13, and figuring out what exactly mechanically did go wrong here, who had custody of all these different components that went into the rocket, went into the oxygen tanks and things like that, versus once we got to Columbia there was a lot more bureaucracy of, well, who sent that email? Did we really have a good idea of any of the stuff that was going on? When's the last time we repaired that? Did anybody look at that? Who was that? Can we find them? There was a lot more you could see built up in red tape, which happens naturally in anything of any sort of government entity. Once we kind of start it, there's it's usually something new, especially when it was a whole brand new field that people had never really done before, all born out of ICBMs from World War II. and
Right.
suddenly turning that space word, so you kind of start out with a lot less bureaucracy and a lot less.
Well, so
Rules
you
and
can. I
rules
think
and
you've
stuff,
kind.
which isn't really a bad
Right.
thing or a good thing. It's just how it kind of naturally happens with
Well,
those entities. It starts and you have
Yeah.
just basic kind of rules, and as you learn more of, oh, these things didn't work, we need to have some rules in place that prevent this from happening again, and then you get more accidents and
Yeah.
more rules that kind of go around it. And somewhere in the mounting pile of rules, yes,
Yeah.
it helps prevent a lot more accidents that would have occurred without them, but you're
Right.
also going to have those failures in some of those middle steps that
Mm-hmm.
happen as well.
Well, because you kind of alluded to it, is that I mean, the Apollo program and all the early NASA programs. The incident I think that really scared the hell out of NASA, I think, was, and you have to, and Stefan and Melanie, you have to correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but it was Apollo 1 that burned on the launch pad, and that when those astronauts were lost, it shook every single person in that program, and they realized we cannot allow this to happen again. I said apathy early, but it's just kind of that, like, oh well, it'll work. It works. It's like, no, you have to be studious, you have to be precise, you have to not be like, oh, when was the last time we checked that? It's like, I checked it yesterday and I checked it again this morning and I'm checking it again now, because that loss of Apollo 1, it is those who are still alive, who were in that control room, who were in that operation, will still get emotional talking about what that was like to lose those guys because of errors and judgment and errors and all that. And so when we talk about that, so then when you look at the shuttle program, that all that complicated stuff, kind of what you were saying, is it got more and more. And that bureaucratic red tape, like you said, is just, there's so much more of it. And it's like, how do you master the chaos of all of that? And you have to, human nature is just to, oh, it's so much, we'll only do what we need to do. But it has to be NASA nature to go, no, we got to do it all. And that's, I am not a rocket scientist. I am not a NASA. Like, I can't imagine what that work is like. But I think for me, my layman reaction is, you have people's lives in your hands, and you need to protect them as much as you can. And that's something that I think was a part of that report of, like, you need to remember what you're doing and the importance of this, of all of the things that are involved. Yes, we're doing amazing technology. Yes, we have incredible computers, but we have people, and people are our superpower, because they're the ones steering the ship. They're the ones doing the exploration. They're the ones doing all of this and furthering the mission of science and furthering humanity's reach. And and maybe that just got lost in translation, and it's one of those disheartening things where it's like, we were going so far and we were reaching so high, and then we didn't. And so that's why I'm so excited about all this stuff. I'm like, we're gonna finally get there. So
Right.
that's the exciting bit.
One of the things that's one of the extra things about, like, ULA doing their rocket sets and the privatization section that makes it so exciting is that we have a lot of lessons we can already just start right out the gate building on from NASA. And ULA is awesome. Have you guys been to the? I've been to the ULA Launch Center in Florida and Cape Canaveral. It's incredible. You should go if you haven't. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. It's amazing. Holy cow! Coolest thing ever. Love it. I love it. Love seeing the how they roll the pad back from the rocket. It's just great. It's really, really great. I'm a big fan of ULA.
I've seen pictures, and I'm just like, this is real. This actually exists. Like, your mind can't comprehend it. It's like the Grand Canyon. You're like, this is a thing we have on Earth. People built this. Okay, all right. There's magic in here somewhere. I'm sure of it, but it's not magic. It's science. It's incredible, and it blows your mind. So, we're going to be excited about science stuff. And given Stefan and Melanie's personal involvement and personal experience, they're going to get excited about it. That's going to help me get excited. So, speaking of being excited, we should probably move on to our next topic, which I believe is Stefan's wheelhouse. The topic on this one is SpaceX Grounded Falcon Fleet due to upper stage misfire. And Stefan, I will shift the conversation over to you to take it from here.
Okay. as you shift, again, I have to build off of what she just said. So I have not been to Cape Canaveral. I have not been to any of those places yet, and I'm just like, I want to go. I want to go so bad. And that's a plan. That's definitely a goal. But you're talking about like seeing the Vulcan. So I have a buddy who works on the Orion capsule for the SLS, and on his Twitter, he had a video of him like standing there as the crawler transporter with the gantry is going by him, and I'm just like, why can't I see things like that? Like, I know one day it'll happen. I do. But living in West Virginia makes that really hard because there's none of that stuff here. So that, you know,
Right.
it kind of breaks the mold to have to leave. But seeing all these things, I just get so excited. I'm like, this is amazing. And one day I'm going to be there. I can see this. I'll be able to stand next to a rocket and be like, I helped make that happen. Like, that's my excitement right there. So, going into the next topic. So, it's no secret that I am a huge, huge fan of SpaceX. ULA is great. 100% agree with you. But SpaceX and what they've done is incredible. I know some people don't like Elon Musk, but that's neither here nor there. To be able to land a booster back to Earth is incredible. And the fact that in just a few days they're going to attempt to launch the Starship and then try to catch the booster is also just nuts. And I will be watching that 100% at work, on the computer, while I am doing whatever I am doing. As Aaron mentioned earlier with the Boeing Starliner, it stranded astronauts into space for months when it was only supposed to be like, what, a few weeks, I believe it was? Like 1 or 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Something like that. So just recently, the 29th of September, SpaceX, with their Crew Dragon, launched to pretty much essentially go up and save those astronauts. There was supposed to be more astronauts on that flight, but because the whole point is to bring those two down, they only sent 2 astronauts up. So when the launch occurred, everything seemed to be going right. Everything was perfect. And then something kind of weird happened, and I noticed it because I watched the live stream. You saw the second stage, like, just kind of disappear off the screen. Like, it's not normally what happens. It kind of just the way it was done. So they've been grounded. The FAA always grounds SpaceX if there's an issue with their rockets, as they do with about anybody who is a private company, because they want to make sure things are safe before you launch another rocket. That is one of the biggest things especially after the issues that NASA had, is safety. It is huge. It is preached and preached and preached. And you hear about it always. And the FAA is huge when it comes to making sure that that occurs. So they grounded the flight because it failed to correctly perform its firing to release the Dragon Freedom into its orbit, which is a bit of a problem because it needs to be in that orbit to get to the space station. However, let's just say what it was supposed to do is it keeps the rocket body from becoming space debris and by going back down into the atmosphere and kind of burning up. That's really what most stage 2s of a rocket do. However, it was disposed in the ocean as planned, but it was not on the nominal deorbit path that it was supposed to be. And anytime there's an issue, even if it's that small, the FAA is like, you got to figure out what that is, because we're not letting you launch until you do. So the biggest problem with that is, so when the FAA grounds all of the Falcon rockets, that also includes the Falcon Heavy rocket, which, if not for the hurricane yesterday, NASA was supposed to launch the Europa Clipper mission on the Falcon Heavy rocket, which they have not been able to do now. However, NASA is very adamant when it comes to SpaceX being able to get their stuff into space. And they have been working with the FAA to unground that, which I think they did in literally like 3 or 4 days after it occurred, because SpaceX is very on the ball to figure out what the issue is. And they figure it out quickly as they can. They figured out what the issue is. I haven't seen the article on exactly what it was. But in regards to that, NASA was supposed to launch yesterday with the Falcon Heavy. Due to the hurricane, obviously, you're not going to launch a rocket in a hurricane. Bad idea. Don't do that. So I think the next...
Oh, come on. It'd be so much fun. It'd be an experiment. Let's see what happens when you try to launch a rocket into a hurricane. Let's find out. What's wrong with testing the hypothesis? We're scientists, aren't we? Come on. What happened to Pythagoras' theorem and all the other guys? I mean, what did they do? What would they say? That's totally a joke. I would never recommend launching a rocket into a hurricane. That would be bad for everyone.
That's a bad
you guys
hypothesis
see the movie
alone.
as kind of a little... For real. Oh my gosh.
Bad ideas. Bad ideas. This is why I'm not in charge of NASA or anything scientific. Because I would just be like, push the button. No, sir, we can't. I just don't care. Push it. Well, okay. I would last 5 minutes. I'd be like, you're fired. What? Why? Everything. Okay,
as soon
fine,
as
whatever.
You launched the rocket, you'd have been fired.
Right. Like, they won't even. They'd be like, you can't push that button. But I wanna. How did you get in here? I don't know.
Oh my
You left the door open. I just got it. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Back to you, Stefan. My apologies.
Yeah, so the plan now is to launch that on Sunday at the earliest.
Okay.
So I have a really cool connection. I actually have a connection with the senior launch director of the NASA Shared Services launch program, and he deals with exactly that launch. So he messaged me the other day because I wanted to make sure he was safe. First of all, big hurricane.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, and the mission seems to be safe as well. I'm like, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I can understand why you would definitely want to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's supposed to launch. I think they said the 13th is their plan, as long as weather permits, which there's no hurricane, so it should permit, as long as winds stay where they're supposed to be and things of that nature.
Okay, so that'll be Sunday. Okay.
Yes, it'll be Sunday.
All right.
So, yeah, that's the main part. The biggest thing is, if rockets are grounded, it brings everything to a halt. So they have to figure that out immediately. And SpaceX, when it comes to Starship, they have to go through FAA regulatory approval before they can even launch another test flight, and that takes a long time. And let's just say the FAA and SpaceX aren't getting along lately.
Gee, I wonder why. What could ever be causing the conflict? I mean, geez. Why can't they we just need to make them a shirt that says "Get Along" shirt and put them together, and then they'll figure it out. Yeah. Sorry, that's not how you solve problems between governmental agencies. That's a way to make it worse, really worse.
Aaron's just bringing it.
They'll never launch ever again after that.
No.
Well, and I think so. To your point, that's what Melanie was saying is it's that red tape. Red tape exists for a reason, and there's this tension, I think, in a lot of governmental organizations and a lot of governmental discussions, because there's equal parts we want to make things decentralized. We want to make it so that we're not so tied up in the regulatory element that it becomes almost choking and restrictive. But there's the other side of it, is we need those things to slow things down so that we don't make the mistakes where we've made them before, where that red tape would have said, hey, whoa, let's take 15 seconds more and examine this before we go barreling down the highway, on the black ice in a 67 Chevy without traction control. Let's just be smart about this, could we please? And so that is that tension of having your bureaucratic systems to control, but also not having it. It's that delicate walking of a line, and unfortunately, because it's government, especially U.S. government, we can't do that really well at all. We don't know how to walk that line. We know how to be on either side of it and then go one way or the other far, but we don't know how to stay just in the middle and be smart about it. We're just no, we're shutting it all down and we're in control, so I'm not allowed, whatever. It's okay, well, that doesn't help. Or we're going to launch anyway, so that doesn't help either. So if they could just come to the middle of the road, we'll put them in a get-along car. That's what we'll do. We'll put them in a double-wide car where they just have to get along in the same vehicle, and that's the metaphor we're going with today. There you go. We're putting NASA and SpaceX in a get-along car.
Well, NASA
great.
and SpaceX
That's
aren't
a salute.
getting along. It's the FAA.
Oh, NASA and
SpaceX
whoever.
aren't getting
the
along.
FAA. Okay, all right. Sorry. We'll throw a NASA out the car. We'll put the FAA in the get-along car. So there you go. There's our solution. We're solving problems here on the Quantum Photons podcast. We got it all figured out now. Problem solved. Easy peasy. All right. Anything else that you want to add on there, Stefan? Sorry, I have just crashed into the conversation several times.
You talked about the Columbia accident, so I had to do a long, very involved project on the Challenger accident, and I had to read the Senate's hearing on that entire accident. And people think it was just one thing. No, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of issues. Some of them so bad that I was so shocked when I read that document. I'm like, how did this go on for so long? But the problem is, even after Challenger, it still went on. It was going on when Columbia happened. And that's the whole problem with what they did. The space shuttle program was doomed when it began. That was the coin saying. It was doomed when it began. And so it's crazy to see it, because like I also had to do research on what the space shuttle was supposed to do. It definitely didn't do what it was supposed to do, because it was supposed to launch weekly. Their plan was to launch the space shuttle weekly. Yeah, because it was supposed to be reusable. No, definitely not. The space shuttle was supposed to look different than it did. Didn't look the way it was supposed to either. And a lot of that is, as you said, governmental control. The government controls things. You know, if they want to change it, they change it, and they have to deal with it. And that's a huge problem, too, with NASA's missions, is they're on a budget, because the government gives them a budget, and that budget has to be followed. And it makes it very difficult for them to do extra things, so that's why they've contracted out a lot of things. You know, they have to. And, I mean, it's made them successful in being able to launch missions and to launch satellites and to launch the different things that they've launched. But it hasn't given them the ability.
Right. Here's a curiosity, and either you or Melanie can answer this question. It feels like, and this may be just like no kidding, you're saying the obvious here, but it feels like NASA is really good at administering and managing a program. They are terrible at implementing it and making it happen. And so it feels like the future of NASA and space travel is NASA will become what it probably should have been in the first place, which is an administrator of the program. They are the launch, they manage, they certify, they sign, they seal, they deliver, they do the things, but then SpaceX, ILA, and everybody else, they're the ones that bring the pieces to the table and say, okay, here's the rockets, here's the launcher, here's the space shuttle, or here's the spaceship, whatever. We've got it, we've managed it, we've raised private funds, we've got the funding on our end, and we've done the work because we're able to do the testing without having all this red tape slowing us down, and we've gotten it to where it's tested and verified. So now here, let's partner together and let's go and launch some stuff and make it happen and get us back to the moon, get us to Mars, get us beyond, and all the things that we dream about. That feels like where this is going, because it just doesn't seem like NASA has the ability or the capacity at the moment. Again, an I feel statement, because I don't, again, know a lot of facts about it, but it feels like what I'm seeing and hearing and understanding is NASA's really good at administering now, but they are not really good at making stuff happen when it comes to producing products to get to space.
Well, I don't want to shoot NASA down.
Not unique to just NASA. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Professor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I will call you Professor because you are my professor. I will not call you by your name. Just won't do it. It's just not. It's not going to happen.
You're welcome to call me Melanie. That's totally fine.
Okay. Well,
either one is perfectly fine, whichever you're comfortable with.
But anyhow.
Okay.
So I don't want to badmouth NASA. They're great. But I have seen a lot of people do not like the administrator. Bill Nelson, I believe his name is. A lot of people point to the fact that he's the issue. He doesn't want to move forward. He wants to use old style things. So like the SLS, that rocket, the majority of it is made up of reused space shuttle parts. That's what he believed was best. Yeah. He wants to reuse the old things. Yeah. And a lot of people are not happy with it. The SLS program is way over budget, and it's way, way, way delayed. They were supposed to launch the second mission, I think this year. That didn't happen. And a lot of that has to deal with his mindset of the way things need to be. He has this old style of thinking, well, the old's better than the new, and a lot of people don't like it. I would, like I said, I'm not bad-mouthing NASA. If they offered me a job, I'd be going to work for them immediately. But I have had to read articles, I've looked at things, and a lot of it points to people not liking Bill Nelson and his thoughts and processes, because like the SLS should be like the next generation of rocketry, not reusing old parts.
Right.
But it's reusing old parts. The only new thing in it is the Orion capsule. That's the only new thing on it. Everything else is reused or kind of like the engines for the SLS is like updated by Aerojet Rocketdyne, but it follows the same principle of what was on the space shuttle. And it's like, you want to move forward, but you're using the old things to try and move us forward. That's not going to work. Yeah. It's just not.
Right.
I mean, you look at Starship. That thing is the most powerful rocket ever. And when you watch the first launch, which I plan to do a podcast about talking about this, it threw concrete in the air from the power of that rocket. Also, they didn't have a water deluge system. That's another topic entirely.
They learned. They're learning. It's fine. It's experimentation. This is the process. Don't you remember Pythagoras' theorem? Like, this is how it works, man.
That concrete flew.
I keep referencing Pythagoras' theorem, but it's completely. It has nothing to do with anything. It's unrelated. It's completely abstract. It's not even related to space travel, but that's the only science I know from school, okay? That's all I got.
It's also funny because you're also talking to a professional math tutor too, so
right. It's a theorem. You got to test your theorems. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
But when that launched, that concrete actually went far enough to destroy a van. It also destroyed the tank farm, and it was ridiculous. But that's new technology. Like, if you look at the most recent Raptor engine that they like updated, that thing doesn't have half the nozzles that you see on rocket engines now. It's crazy, and it's incredible to see that update in technology. It's not a downgrade in technology; it's an update in technology. And I believe that's where NASA eventually needs to be. I know they have a budget, but I think a lot of that has to do with the people that are in control of NASA and what they want to do. Right. They're still following that old guide of this is what we should do, when they need to look at newer things. Because if they want to get to where SpaceX is, they're going to have to do that. And like you said, I don't know that NASA will ever be able to do that. It might get to the point where they administer the flights and don't launch rockets anymore. But the whole fact of the matter is, even if they do that, they have to have that mindset to be like, hey, we need to use them to do what we need to do. And he just doesn't have that mindset. So that's my, I guguess, soapbox there. So you can...
well, and like you said, the future is the future, and anyway. Melanie, did you have? I think you were going to say something. Throw in there something at the end there.
Yeah, I was going to say to play devil's advocate for a second there with the administrator there for NASA. I agree with you, Stefan, it's not where NASA needs to be heading, of going with old and kind of recycled parts there, 100%. There were, I don't want to say the same, but there were some similar things when I came into PARI, the Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute, when coming in kind of from the outside, not having known the inside of the structure and all of the little nuances that go into the infrastructure of that site and whatnot, and looking at some things that was like, great, I'm going to work on improving this because this is something that's old and outdated, and we can fix this, and I can make these things happen. Here's my little laundry list here of how to fix these things. And then once you're inside, like you said, it's a lot of that budget stuff, but it always is different being on the inside when you're actually given that budget, and not just the budget, but the priorities list from the people above you, and then ultimately from the general public, who end up kind of telling you what they want, what they need, what they want to see, and you end up getting sometimes kind of cornered where it's like, all I have is this Band-Aid to do. To go and fix a car with. I gotta somehow make it work. Like, sometimes you do get kind of roped into those things. I try to be careful in being critical of some of our NASA administrators. Like, I totally agree, there's a lot of them where they make decisions and I look at it and like, oh, no, don't do that. And others, I'm giving the thumbs up, but at the same time, I try and kind of play devil's advocate in my head and say, you know what, I'm not on the inside. Once I'm there, I bet I would maybe I would do the same thing. Maybe not. I don't really know. It's
that or you'd be like me and get fired.
Sometimes that's a hard thing to really know. But,
well, and I think
what they've got going on with the budget and the economy and stuff at the moment, they might be kind of strapped there. I still agree with you. I don't think that this is going to be the best way for them to really kind of do this. I think doing administration might be their strongest suit and one to lean into.
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of you made the point of like there is as much as it's easy. I mean, again, it's not that it's easy or whatever, but it's like the NASA administrator, the buck stops with him. Like he's the man, he's the guy, or whoever, she's the girl, whoever ends up being the next administrator, whatever. But there's also the element of, and I forget this sometimes, there is a lot of congressional authority and power that goes into funding. And a lot of that money that gets sent down the pipe or doesn't get sent down the pipe is directly tied to Senate, Congress, to the Senate, to the Congress, to the president, to the vice president, to like all of them. They set their legislative schedules, they set their legislative budgets, and they hold certain amounts of responsibility when it comes to funding NASA. And the big picture debate has always been, why are we funding NASA and what are we getting out of it? And the issue has always been, we've gone to the moon, but why are we going farther? Which is a lot of what jump-started the Mars mission ideas of, okay, we've been to the moon, great, we did it, but we haven't been back. What are we doing and where are we going? And that's what I think has kind of shaken up NASA, but it's also granted ILA and SpaceX and all these other guys to get into the game because they're like, well, we have that vision. We want to go to Mars. We want to push the limits. We want to see what's out there. It's interesting. There is that nostalgia element with going back to the moon because obviously we haven't in a long time. And there's those of us who are old enough to like at least know kind of John F. Kennedy's speech of, before the end of this decade, we will go to the moon and whatever, and that they did that. And you watch the movie Apollo 13 and you're gobsmacked at how they did what they did with the technology they had, and that they were basically just doing everything and anything they could, and they were just flying out into space and hoping it would work. And it's like we almost want a return to that, but we can't because we know so much and we have so much technology that it's a lot quote unquote easier to get out there. And I think my hope is, my fingers are crossed, that we will get a mission to Mars like underway at some point in the next couple of years. Because I think that's what will put people back in the mindset of like, hey, let's fund them. Let's give them the money. Let's make it happen. Because people are best when they're dreaming, and they're dreaming of what could be and where we can go. We're okay, cool. We've been to the moon. Whoop-de-doo. We've already been there. We've got the pictures. Oh, they were faked. Lots of fun. People have. Yeah, well, we're not even going to get into that. We're going to push that off to the side. Put that in the parking lot and let it just sit there for a minute. But the idea of like people are best motivated to fund things or to put forth money to things when they're dreaming of, and they're able to see that's where we want to go. That's where we're going, and we're going to get there. And I think Mars is the big dream, and my hope is that we get there, and that's that. So there we go. Before we move on to Melanie's her third topic, anything else we want to close out that with?
The Artemis
other than
program,
NASA needs to. Okay.
The Artemis program is actually supposed to go to Mars. That's the end goal of the Artemis program, but the beginning is to colonize the moon, then build a ship, pretty much, to be able to travel to Mars. That is the Artemis program's goal. That's still a long ways down the way, but then you also have SpaceX, who's like, we're going to occupy Mars. We're doing it. That is his goal. Like that is his goal. When he built SpaceX, his whole goal was to go to Mars, and that's one of the reasons the Starship has been built and is being built. In regards to that, it's also going to be one of the ships to send people back to the moon. So that's another reason its testing is going so quickly, so rapidly. They're trying to get it taken care of, set up, and the fact that they're even trying to catch a booster that big in a launch tower with arms is just beyond my mind's comprehension. I've never heard of that's out of science fiction. Honestly, that's something you would see in science fiction. So I'm hoping it doesn't crash and burn when they do it this coming week, but we'll see what happens. I'll be watching it with open arms, that's for sure. So that is my final...
Sorry, when you said open arms, like, are you going to catch the rocket, Stefan? What are you planning on doing? This doesn't sound safe.
I'm going to travel to Brownsville, Texas, stand underneath that tower, and just go like this.
Come to me, rockets! I will catch you! And then that was the last we heard of Stefan. He went and saw Jesus, and that was the end of it. And okay, well, sad times. Experience of a lifetime.
Way too literal.
Hey, look, when I commit to a bit, I go 100 miles to the. I'm going for it. Go big or go home. There is no halfways.
Okay,
But
fine.
we're making it happen.
I'll reword it. I am looking into that launch with a very open mind to see what happens. Is that better?
There we go. There we go. I can't use any of that to make a bit, so you're fine. You're safe. You're safe now. Everything's fine, Stefan. It's fine. All right. Now that we've completely derailed, we should probably find a rail to get back on. Hopefully not the third rail. Find yourselves back on the first and second. And this is where Melanie comes in, and we're talking about, let me find my thingamabob to do the thingamabob with. So you are, specifically, you have, you're wanting to talk about the Brevard. Ooh, very hoity-toity. Brevard. The Brevard Astronomy Club, which is a part of PARI, I believe is what we call it. So it's bio, PARI, history, science, and how we can partner the whatever. The Astronomy Club. Brevard. Sorry, it's nothing, like, you all are lovely. You're a great astronomy club. No hate, but it's just like there's a movie theater in town, and God love them, and no shade on them, but it's spelled Cover, and so you go, oh, it's the cover. No, it's the cover. And I'm like, I don't. Okay, local interesting rural techniques in naming things. Good, great, grand. Good go. Okay, great. So it's the cover. So the Brevard Astronomy Club. So Melanie, why don't you walk us through, and you just tell me when to go to the next slide, and I promise I will not interject and derail your conversation.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine. This is the Brevard Astronomy Club is about a couple miles away, a little ways away from PARI, and they're a new club, absolutely awesome, built with amazing people, really good friends of mine. They're great people, great astronomy club, always looking to kind of do lots of science outreach and connect with people in the community, all those kind of fun things. And so PARI's its own entity there, and they recently got into this partnership with the Brevard Astronomy Club to kind of work together. And there's lots of other organizations that would be interested. I believe they would. They definitely should, in my opinion, be interested in partnering with PARI and with Brevard Astronomy Club as just different ways to kind of get through improving, expanding space science. Brevard is in North Carolina. There's a Brevard, Florida. It's not, or Brevard County, something like that in Florida. Not the same one. Brevard Astronomy Club is up in a city in North Carolina here, not far away from where PARI is at, tucked away in the lovely Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. It's quite lovely. You can go to the next one here. Yay. PARI's a really amazing, interesting place. We kind of already went through my bio, but that's there's a little bit more stuff in there.
Okay, hold on. Team time out. You are selling yourself short, ma'am, in that introduction that you threw down. Let us go through this just gently. Okay, so the Astronomy and Education Directorate, we got that. That's great. That's brilliant and amazing. Master's degree in astronomy, got that. We checked that off the list. Vice Chair of the National Board of Directors for Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, USA. Didn't know about that. Fantastic. Also, first female recipient of the Darrell Kane Award for Excellence in Leadership. Hi, you should have led with that one. That's a pretty impressive situation to be able to lay claim to and call on. That's pretty awesome.
It's at the bottom of the bottom.
Right? Yeah. Everything else. It's just there. You did that. Okay. Cool. You did it. I'm amazed. I'm awesome. Yay! Applause all around. But then I want to talk about this one. So what is this? It's a 6-foot Dobsonian 6-inch. Okay, I was like 6 foot. That's a large one. Okay, so 6-inch Dobsonian telescope. Explain to me what is that. Explain to me that story, because I'm sure there is something there that I'm
yeah. Well, that's what I did with my dad as a high school project, was build a
Oh,
telescope.
okay.
That was my first telescope. As
Okay.
well. We found some old books from a deceased grandfather that had something in there about build your own telescope and had some general guidelines. And I was
Okay.
very, very excited. I was like 16
Aw.
and super excited. And Dad was like, "Yeah, sure, we can absolutely do this." I was excited beyond belief. And as he tells me the story, he later kind of turned to Mom as soon as I ran out the room, excited and going to show my sisters, this great thing we were gonna do. He talked to Mom, was like, "I have no idea what I'm doing. Wait, this girl.
I've unleashed a monster. What have I done? No.
That's right. But it was a wonderful father-daughter project that we had and really enjoyed working on, and for about 2 years before we really got it put together. And so it was my
That's so
first
cool.
telescope, and I started using that to share astronomy and share the night sky with people
Wow.
everywhere, different local schools and the library, and anybody that would let me
Listen.
come on their property and listen,
Yeah.
and want to look through the telescope. And
That is so
got
cool.
me to my job at the Museum of Science and Industry, and I was there for like 7 years.
Wow, okay.
Working in the planetarium and as one of their space science people and experts, and then got into college, and was doing. Ended up kind of working at the post office through college.
We all have to do work.
Right.
We all have to do work.
Right. It was
I
a
worked
great
at
introduction to red tape in government.
Right.
So,
I worked at Starbucks while I went to college. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel your pain in a different. We're parallel pain. Your pain is government. My pain was
Yes.
customers.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
yeah.
My pain was
So-
Christmas at that point. Every time Christmas came around, it was like, oh no, let the Christmas season pass quickly. It was
Right.
a very difficult time.
Oh, that's when I worked at
but
Walmart.
great.
Same Christmas time at Starbucks. Similar feelings. Yeah.
Great, yeah,
Good,
for
great,
real.
grand.
For
Wait a
real,
second.
but I
Yeah.
really loved doing that telescope with Dad.
You-
Nice.
you
Sorry,
say
Stefan, you
that
were
about
saying?
Christmas. It's just as bad for me working with inmates because they order 15 times more during Christmas, so the orders are way worse.
yeah.
So I still deal with just as bad. Inmates are horrible.
The holiday season is terrible all around. There we go. That's our solution. Never mind the kindness and mercy and.
I love Christmas. I do not love having to work in an industry that deals with Christmas. Because
Okay. Well, there you go.
That's
Yeah,
that.
that is very difficult. Very
Okay.
difficult.
Well, someday soon you will be free of the Christmas hauntings. All right. I'm guessing we should probably go to the next slide before we continue to
Yeah.
derail.
I do want to point out the picture there.
Oh,
I actually
go
took
back.
that picture up at PARI. I took that last one,
Oh,
not this one.
nice.
Yeah, that one I took that picture up at PARI, and it was I
That is a
couldn't
pretty
have
picture.
asked for a better photo. We had the Pleiades star
cool.
cluster right
Yeah.
up there above the 26. That's our 26-meter radio telescope. That's one of them on the site there at PARI, and then you had that lovely meteor in the wintertime. It was freezing
That's
cold,
great.
but it was wonderful to set up the camera and get those pictures. It's a
That is
great,
really awesome.
beautiful site.
That's legit.
Absolutely.
I thought it was like something you just grabbed off the internet, but the fact that you shot
No.
that thing,
I took that picture.
okay, that's legit. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's and the
Thank you.
just glorious. I want one of those.
All
All right, next slide.
Next slide. There we go. Yeah, so there's more of the history of PARI. It did not used to be PARI. It used to be NASA. It was one of
Oh.
their tracking facilities, one of their satellite tracking facilities and kind of satellite experimentation facilities. It was built in the early 60s. They opened it and kind of used it as a little bit of a spy station to spy on the Soviets at the time. And so it was all very top secret because everything with space exploration at that time was top
Yep.
secret, including PARI's location and, barbed wire fences and guards
geez.
and the whole 9 yards, all of it. They had about, if I recall correctly, it was somewhere around like 23 radio telescopes, somewhere in the 20s
Sheesh.
of radio telescopes on the site, varying sizes. A lot of it was experimentation with like what can we do with different satellites in what frequencies, in what parts of the radio spectrum, what works better, what
what doesn't work in different storms, how do we communicate, how do we do let's experiment with search and rescue satellites, let's experiment with telecommunications, all those things that were brand new, and a lot of that was born at this site up here.
Interesting.
There's today there's two 26-meter telescopes. There's a 12-meter and there's a 4.6-meter. Eventually, NASA left the site somewhere in the 80s. Department of Defense was there for a period of time. I believe the Army was there for a period of time. Other secret government agencies were there. We have kind of some hints of them. Don't really know a whole lot about what they did. We still find some old documents and old equipment here and there in the different basements and storage buildings, and a lot of it's just, there's a whole building of storage with like toilets and chairs and desks in it, spares of different things that's just like become storage of those old things. So no aliens. I searched. No aliens.
Darn.
Yeah, just kidding. No aliens on the site.
That's where they're hiding. They're hiding in North Carolina. Never mind Area 51 or Roswell. No. We got them. North Carolina. That's where they're at.
That's what you don't know about.
Oh, God.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a great site. Anyways, it was kind of, once NASA left, because they didn't really need it so much anymore, budget and maintaining the entire site, because it's like 250 acres, if I recall correctly. It's huge. There's only so much of it that's mowed and maintained like that. A lot of it's forest. It had lots of other dishes. In the picture back here, kind of towards the back road there, you can see a couple of like white towers. Those used to have radio dishes on them. They took a lot of the equipment with them when they left, and some of it was too cost prohibitive to really take with them, like the two giant 26 meters. Those were their two first ones that they made, and very large, really deep foundations, about 10 stories high, and their foundations go about as deep underground as they are high.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so taking those kind of things with them was going to cost them more than just leaving it.
Right.
Letting the property just kind of return to the Forest Service in the Blue Ridge Mountains there. So at some point here in 1999, after everything had been kind of abandoned, Don Klein sort of purchased the site. He founded it as a nonprofit. He didn't really buy it, because you can't buy land from the government per se, but there was an act of Congress that actually was passed, you can go and look it up, with Mr. Don Klein to trade land that he had that the government wanted and were hoping to obtain, and the land that Don Klein wanted, and to take that over.
So allow me to derail this for another moment. Yes. Don Klein sounds like a mafia boss. Okay, government, my name Don Klein. I want this property. I have some land for you. I have an offer. This is important. But you must do it. Do it through an act of Congress. Well, Don, we just know it's important. I want this forever. I don't want this to be something under the table. I want this to be legitimate. I have so many illegitimate businesses. This is the one legitimate. Sorry, Don Klein, if you're still alive, this is not meant to suggest that you are a mobster, but this just sounds like hey, I got some land, I'll give you the land, you give me this. Oh, okay, cool. Act of Congress, here we go. Problem solved. That's amazing.
He is still around, and he's
okay. My apologies, Don Klein. Please do not come after me.
He's a very exciting person.
Yeah. Hey, Don, you want to see an idiot in Colorado talk about you? Take a look.
Oh my gosh, he's a very brilliant person and wonderful to talk to. He has done so much in his life and working in television.
I would say, yeah. Well, you don't get an act of Congress just by that's incredible that amount of effort and work to make this happen occur. Like that's a statement on him, but it's a statement on what they wanted to do with this land. Right. That's huge.
Yeah, him and his late wife are very big advocates of STEM programs, outreach, working with different people. He loves it. He funds many different space science in particular items and programs and compartments of universities, museums, all kinds of things, because he's very passionate about space science and outreach. Really very fascinating person to talk to and really hear all of the great accomplishments and things in technology that he helped pioneer that got him to the place where he could trade that kind of land.
Right.
He saw the value that existed here with with those radio telescopes and the infrastructure that's already in place to let's take it over, let's refurbish these buildings, and let's make this something that's nonprofit and open to the public and see what we can really do and achieve with this. And so that's really what he did, and it's an incredible place. If you want to go to the next slide.
Sure. There we go.
Yeah. Really, really incredible place. And so the main thing that that we really focus on is, there it is. The main thing that we really focus on is that science outreach and education with programs for, scouts and all different clubs, including astronomy clubs, robotics clubs, doing outreach to different schools, field trips. Summer camps are huge there and are absolutely amazing. And I would advocate for those summer camps for kids with even the least amount of interest in science to attend those summer camps. It's a wonderful time, a great opportunity to really explore with some incredible people, explore some very interesting topics in space science and radio astronomy. They get the chance to do their own research project, kind of real miniaturized, because it's summer camp. You're only there for a week or two, depending on the camp. To really kind of work on those programs, and so they get to do their own research project with the guidance of the PARI staff who are all there to make it happen and make it be help them kind of get into it and see what all goes into being a successful scientist and what that means and what the challenges are, and make it a really fun thing too. With all the fun summer camp things of roasting marshmallows and
right,
and all those fun sort of things. It's just a great time for kids and to get them real excited about science. These two telescopes are used most often for those student projects. They're also used for other students as well, like college students all over. They get to use them. There's a minimum sort of small fee, so that you're renting the time on the telescope, and then all of your data gets saved on a cloud storage that's maintained there at PARI. And so the 4.6 meter and the 12 meter telescopes are best used for those. Both of those are aligned for 1420 megahertz radio transmissions, which is roughly in the 21 centimeter wavelength. There, if you like frequency versus wavelength there. Both of those are great because they are remotely operable. You can operate them from anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of students who still get to, especially the summer camp kids, who get to maintain some of their access to kind of use those, or classrooms. A lot of classrooms and teachers will use them all over the world and get to kind of take in some different data. Your differences in your sizes there gives you a better resolution. Your larger size dishes give you a lot more resolution than your smaller ones, just like regular visible light telescopes. Those same principles apply to radio light as well, just a different band of light there. If you want to hit the next place there. I guess I should mention Smiley and the smiley face on Smiley there. It's pretty cool. Smiley face on the dish there was painted on by some NASA engineers when it was NASA, because that was one of the radio telescopes that was tracking satellites and communications and intercepting communications between the Soviets, that led to the cessation of the Cold War there and bringing down the Berlin Wall and whatnot, or parts of that helped lead to that. Some of the communiques that were intercepted with that telescope, but they used that telescope kind of spying on the Russians, and the Soviets were kind of spying on NASA and the U.S., and it was this fun little joke of let's let them know we know that they're watching us kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah. And so we maintain the smiley face with paint and everything and make sure that stays on there to this day, because it's just great history and great fun of everything that's on there. But if you want to check out the next one. There you go. So there's some of the science that we can do with the radio telescopes. You can measure Doppler shifts, which gives you the measurement of direction, velocity of different objects. Depends on kind of how large your object is, because your resolution of your telescope will help you find your smaller or larger objects. It's great for detecting and mapping different things like hydrogen gas intensities, kind of a brightness, if you will, of that gas. Radio mapping different parts of the galaxy or the sky or particular regions in the sky with that radio data, so that you can measure how bright something is in radio light, how much of it you're getting, where it's moving, that kind of stuff. And all that data, again, gets saved on the PARI cloud server that's there at PARI to maintain all of that data, and you can always go and pull it up. It's a great system to use. It's also very it's a great introduction to the difficulties of doing that type of science. There's a lot of difficulties that come along with that. The picture on the right there is not a PARI image, not one that we took at PARI, or not one that I took, but that's in radio frequencies of the Milky Way galaxy. This isn't from one telescope. Pictures like this, or this might be from one, but pictures like this most often are built from several telescopes. Particularly, you get some in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere, so you can get a really good full view. And pictures like that can take years to put together, to really put that together, because a lot of these, your radio telescope with its resolution in radio waves is rather than like visible light, where we just kind of open up one large camera, let the photons kind of sit onto the come flying onto the CCD chip there and take our snapshot. It says I have an unstable internet connection, but it looks stable, so it might be weird. Sorry.
You're okay.
No,
You're good.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, good. Yeah. But yeah, so a little different from visible light telescopes. You've got this smaller, and your resolution and your size is different depending on the telescopes, but you kind of move across taking image and taking data about how bright something is or how fast something is moving in this one direction, and then you kind of step down a little bit, and you can step down an entire jump where you went from here down to here, but your resolution is going to be very, very poor. To get really high resolution like this with all those tiny details means that you had your field of view somewhere, and you step down maybe like an arc second, so that you get real fine detail. And so then you do the whole thing again, and then an arc second, do the whole thing again, and you start building maps of where these different intensities are coming from, color coding to make those pictures really come together. And so it can take years to put those types of pictures together. Different wavelength of light, and so we kind of have to work with it a little differently to build a picture out of it when it's in those wavelengths of light, so that our eyes can't see, but that we can measure. And so we have to do something a little bit different in that processing to put together a picture.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I sometimes like to say that it's kind of like paint by numbers when you take in image data of and you just have graphs so of data, and you start applying colors to some of those numbers and intensities so that you can build some sort of visual picture there.
Absolutely.
And so they do, PARI and Brevard Astronomy Club do lots to kind of partner with the community. That's kind of a list of different things that PARI can do and has done and likes to do with all different organizations. We partner even with we've partnered before with different colleges to host different programs and summer camps together with them, different scholarships, different annual events. PARI is also a International Dark Sky Association Dark Sky Park, so there's events surrounding that. PARI is always looking to work with anybody who's interested in STEM and do what they can to really expand that reach to as many people as possible. It's really, really a wonderful place. I love it.
Nice. That's awesome. That brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of it. Yeah. That's a picture of Don Klein's hot air balloon. He helped pioneer. He and his wife helped pioneer a lot of technology in hot air balloons.
Nice.
Yeah, and so that's his hot air balloon flying over at Don over PARI.
Did he, make PARI, he also has a hot air balloon. Of course he does. So
yeah, of course.
I have a question.
Like any good Bond villain, he has his own hot air balloon.
Awesome.
Just kidding, Don Klein. You're a lovely man, and you do great things for the community.
Oh my gosh, it's so awesome.
There's the alternate universe story of what could Don Klein have been had he turned slightly evil.
Yes. That's awesome.
He secretly operates something underneath the PARI, and he has his own balloon, and it's terrible. Okay, there we go. That's enough of that. Like I said, I'm the language arts teacher. I'll create a story out of anything. There you go.
He's not
Very
wrong,
fun.
though.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wonderful place. Wonderful people who are all there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got my heart in that place. It is absolutely just amazing. All the people who are there are amazing and make it really amazing. We had some really great. Yeah, we had some really great kids. One kid in particular that always kind of stuck in my heart. That was just like one of those really cool experiences in my whole career of this kid who came to summer camp and just kind of as a testimony to PARI itself and all of the people in the programs and how it's designed there for summer camp. This kid, he came to summer camp. Myself and the other educator thought he was just a golden student. He was wonderful. He was always so polite and excited and wanted to learn and was really part of all these things. We found out after he went home that his parents emailed us and were like, "What did you do to our child?" And we're like, they're like, "He has been struggling with school. He has been struggling with motivation. He has been struggling with understanding why or what's the point of all of this? What am I supposed to do? School's not exciting," and just lackluster to when he came home, like the entire year after when he came home, he couldn't stop talking about PARI and how exciting science and math and all of these fields suddenly became for him. And it was just incredible to have really like been part of that for that kid.
That's
we
awesome.
had no idea that that's something he was struggling with, and seemed like his whole confidence kind of really boosted. And he ended up coming back the last couple of years. He came back again as another student and eventually came back as a counselor in training. And then this past year, he came back as a summer camp counselor and an intern there. So
That's
it is
Gosh.
future is just
Okay,
bright
so
and blazing.
Melanie, you know I'm a teacher, right? So
Yes.
I teach alt ed, and alt ed is challenging on the best of days. We deal with a lot of kids who have a lot of history, and it's history that is not their fault for the most part. And so they come to us with a lot of what you're talking about, like, I don't understand, I don't know why they're doing this, and they come to us with experiences in education that have not been great, and people haven't treated them well. That story got my teacher heart going. Yes, mission accomplished. Success has been had. Like,
Me too.
and I
my
think
gosh.
it's beautiful because there's something compelling about science. Like, I don't understand half of it, but there's something compelling about it that, like, I want to try and understand more of it. Like, being able to talk and, like, watching your presentation and even talking with Stefan, like, beginning to grasp what this stuff means and how it works and what it can do. Like, that's exciting because that's real world application. And this kid who kept coming back to you, he was like, this is interesting. This is what I want to know more about. This, I will do everything else to get here because this is where I want to be. And the proof, obviously, is he kept coming back to the point where he was a counselor. And my guess is he'll continue to push and fight and find a way into the sciences, be it through PARI or something else. That's the beauty of it. And so I will close this because we are approaching an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, goodness, yes.
But it's been brilliant and awesome, and I love it. But I think the way to close this out is to bring it back to science fiction, which is my love and my heart. If you talk to, and a lot of our Star Trek actors have left us, the original crew, but there's a story, and it's a story that a lot of people know, and it's not new, but it's a story of Jimmy Doohan. And Jimmy Doohan played Montgomery Scott on Star Trek: The Original Series. He played him in all movies. He was the engineer. I'm giving him all she got, Captain. I'm giving him all she got. And Scotty was a miracle worker. He was an engineer, and he told a story about a woman who came to the conferences and was looking just rough, having a time in her life. And he says, "Look, you come to the next conference, come to the next convention. I'll see you there." And she did, and it continued. And she got better, and she got better, and she got to the point where, like, the last conference, she's like, I'm alive because of you. But there's also stories of people who've come to like LeVar Burton, who was the engineer in Star Trek. People have come up to him and said, I became an engineer because you showed me and I was interested. People have talked to the people who've played characters on, like doctors on the show. They've been like, I became a doctor because I saw what was possible. I wanted to do that. People have talked about, I went into the Navy. I wanted to be a captain. I wanted to be a commander. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be a helmsman. I wanted to be so the power of things in media and in reality is that it exists to encourage. And the beauty of Star Trek and of real space travel is that we need to keep funding it, we need to keep empowering it, and need to keep promoting it and talking about it, because there are people out there, there are kids, there are adults, there are generations out there who are looking for something, and they want that thing. And sometimes all it takes is going, ooh, that guy's talking about space. Ooh, that's a launch. I want to watch a launch now. Oh my gosh. And 5 years later, they're watching every launch. They're trying to get applying to school. Like, there's such a power in a shared story. And that's kind of what I wanted to close us out with is that everybody has a story that brought them to where they are. And the beauty of a lot of scientists and teachers and a lot of us in this industry and world, we didn't get into it for the money. I mean, I'm sure the money in SpaceX is good, but like I didn't get into teaching for the money, and I'm sure, Melanie, you didn't get into being a professor for the money either.
No.
We got into it because we want to see people find a connection with science, with the material, because the power of that connection, when that moment with that kid, when he went home and your parents were like, what have you done to our child? And you're like, well, we just showed him. And they're like, no. Do it again. Do it more, because this kid is suddenly, that switch got flipped. And the power of those moments is everybody out there is looking for that switch. Sometimes they find it, and sometimes they don't. And it's onerous on all of us to say, look, if we can get as much of that message out there to anybody through media, through whatever, through Star Trek, through Star Wars, whatever, we want people to find their why. We want them to find what they want to do. We want them to find their passion. For me, it will never be science. I will never be a launch director at NASA. I will never be a rocket scientist. I would make all of the mistakes. I would always cite Pythagoras' theorem, and I would get fired. So instead, I will be happily staying in my language arts classroom, teaching people how to write essays and work on research. So eventually, they might actually become scientists and write dissertations on things. But that's kind of how I want to close it out. Is that the power of a shared story is that it can be shared by more than just one, it can be shared by others who are like, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to fight like hell to get myself there. Every story matters, and tonight we've heard some really great stories between Stefan and Melanie, and I appreciate you guys sharing your stories. Stefan for sharing it again, Melanie for sharing it anew, and putting up with my shenanigan behavior.
Wonderful.
And I think that's... I would be delighted to have you back on the next episode, whatever we're talking about. I think you have an extraordinary insight, and you're like, this is not me just trying to be like, oh, you're really smart. No, you're frickin' intelligent, and you know your business, and that I think is really helpful, because I don't know my business. You do. You and Stefan do. I just be like, okay, cool, let's talk about things. There we go, and we do it. So that's my closing.
Everybody to make it all come together.
Yeah, it takes a team. It takes a team of people to keep things going in a straight and forward fashion. Where I'm just like, I want to go zigzag across the salt flats. You got a problem with that? Cool, let's do it.
Yes, but Aaron, you are incredible at hosting, and I will say that you are.
It's fun. I'm like. I don't know what the metaphor is for how much fun I have, but
sometimes I don't know when to interject to speak, because I'm like, I'll just stay here.
You just gotta raise your hand and be like, so please, sir, let me have a moment. Can we please speak? You've been going on for like 20 minutes. Please stop it if you could, and not in that accent, because I don't. Yes, right. Go ahead.
So you had said, school or classes that you wouldn't be interested in. I can tell you that I didn't think I would enjoy planetary science, which is what Melanie teaches as my professor. Mm-hmm. I have been thoroughly surprised. It has been one of the more interesting classes that I've taken. When if you look at the classes of like geology, planetary science, and what else have I had to take? I don't remember. I've taken so many classes. But anyhow, planetary science shocked me. I was like, okay, this is way more interesting than I thought it was. The labs were challenging, but they taught me things that I didn't even know. I didn't know how craters on Mars occurred, but now I'm like, that's how that happened? Mind blown. And I looked at like the last week's classes, and it has to do with planets on science fiction, and I'm like, I'm a giddy school child because science fiction is another love of mine. That's how me and Aaron came to know each other. So I'm like, this discussion post could go to 1,000+ words, and I'm like, I probably need to like, you know, condense down. But it was very interesting because something that I thought I was not going to enjoy, I was thoroughly surprised. And so a class that I was actually like, ugh, I don't want to take this class. I'm now like, I don't want this class to end because I've had some really cool students, classmates, one in particular who always comments on my stuff. But, you know, a professor that not only pushes us, but she's also very encouraging to make sure that we do our best. And that's what you want in a professor. There's some really bad professors out there. Not going to mention names, but I had one of them. Aaron knows all about this. That is the complete opposite when it comes to you, Melanie. And I mean that. Like, I don't just say that like to try and gain brownie points because I'm not that type of person. But I was.
No, I grade fairly.
You do. But you also push your students to do their best, and that's the best thing of a professor. But you also encourage us. You know, like, you're the first professor I think I've ever seen that on my comments you're like, perfect. I'm like, oh wow, okay, great, I did good. You know, there's all these professors that don't even put comments. They're just like 100. Okay, well, what did you think of that discussion? Nothing.
Okay, I'm going to gently push you off your soapbox, Stefan, because we only have so much time. We're at an hour and 30 minutes.
I'm done. It's
Thank
been
you.
A great
Good.
podcast. I won't derail it like Aaron has 15,000 times though. Anyhow.
Oh, okay. All right. I see how it is. So, Melanie, because he's being whatever, and I probably will not do anything good to say in response to that, I'm going to leave you with the last word. What is the thing you want to leave us with before we end this recording and we fade off into the night sky as the northern lights cascade over the horizon?
Yay, that science is exciting and that people should stay curious and ask questions and strive to learn.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Aaron. My co-host at this time has been Stefan and Melanie. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening, and thank you for hanging out with us for a whole hour and a half. Until next time, this has been the Quantum Photons.